Hello, good morning, everyone. So I can see that we are complete now and our speakers are also here too. Can you hear me? Okay, so good morning, everyone. We are having another early start with today's FAR session. So in this fourth virtual session of the Firestarter Incubation Program, you will be learning about term sheet, contracts, and investments. And make sure you understand the basics about them, especially since you will be encountering a lot of them as startups. And because we want you to learn from the experts, we've invited two guest speakers who are experts in their field to mentor you on this topic. Our first part of our session, okay, listen to this. So we'll be from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. We'll have a lunch break, then until 12:50 a.m. By 12:51, we'll regroup and start with the second part of the session. That will more or less last until 2:30 p.m. Okay? Okay, so without further ado, let's hear an opening remarks from our project leader, Ms. Rhea Hagisen.
Yes, hello. So good morning. Thank you so much, Rochelle. More than anything, this has been a common concern with our startups and incubatees, especially with regards to legal things like contracts and the dreaded thing, which is the investment. So every time a startup would or an incubatee would come to us that they have an interested investor, it normally would be the happiest moment of their lives. However, they often meet a lot of humps along the way simply because it's already so technical for them. That is why CDO Bytes created this session solely for you. So you will really be guided and hoping you will be hand-holded by our speakers this today, this morning, and this afternoon. So I do hope that more than anything, you keep a piece of paper beside you and a pen, or perhaps open your notepad in your respective computers. Take note. Kindly please take note. And then if you do have some questions, this is not the time for you to be shy at all, because this is something that this is a session that you should be engaging yourselves with our speakers, because they really know what they're talking about. So they will really be there to help and guide you. So if you do have questions, feel free to raise it before we jump to the next speaker. So more than anything, I want you to be eager to learn about this, because it's very timely. And if it's not applicable yet in your current startup level, I know for a fact that this will be applicable to you in the near future. So you might not see this yet, like you might not see an investment as of yet, but guaranteed that in the next months, in the next few years, you will be able to get one. Hence, it is important for you to be prepared as early as now. So we have esteemed speakers lined up for you today. So grab this opportunity to learn and raise questions if you have to. Thank you so much, and welcome to our fourth virtual Firestarter session.
Okay, thank you for that, Ms. Rhea. Okay, let's begin. Our first speaker who will be tackling contracts investment is Attorney Albert Daba III, a 2015 Y. Seeley Academic Fellow, University of Connecticut, and of course, one of your mentors in the legal aspect under the Firestarter Incubation Program in partnership with Y. Seeley Philippines and the U.S. Embassy in the Philippines. He is an associate at the Ragas Toledo, Pajo, Bagaypo, Elumba and Associates. Attorney Daba III was a former senior associate at SGV and Company, a member practice of Ernst and Young Philippines, and the Philippines' largest multidisciplinary professional services firm with 8 offices across the country. Attorney Daba also developed b.i.t.e.s, a chat box that guides its users through small claims procedure and other procedural matters wherein they can access it by just opening Facebook Messenger, search and chat with b.i.t.e.s. So again, everyone, please help me welcome Attorney Albert Daba III.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. Um, I'll just start my presentation. Hold on. Um, can you see my screen? Hello?
Not yet,
Not yet?
attorney.
Hold on. There. Uh, can you see my screen now? Or wala pa? Not yet?
Yeah,
Not
wala pa.
yet.
Wait. How, how can I share my screen?
In Zoom, kindly click on the share screen button
Share
below.
screen button. Okay. So, yeah. Okay. Thank you. And there.
There.
Okay, so, okay. Okay, so in this session, no, I will be talking about, well, contracts and investments. Well, contracts, it's a smaller topic. It's something that we'll just in a sense breeze through, no, talking about its elements, what are things, some quick tips regarding contracts which you as as founders of startups would need to know what to do with, like what are the contracts that need to be in a public document, meaning what are the contracts that need to be notarized, what are the contracts that need to be written down and cannot just be verbal, for example. Um, so I'll talk about that at length uh, this morning. And then after that, I will be talking about investments. So for investments, I'll be talking more about things that are quite useful to you, which I think are useful to you. No, um, so for example, what are the things that you need to do to maintain control in your startup, even if you're receiving more and more funding? Alternatives to taking in shares of stock. I'll also talk about those. And other matters relating to investments. Even matters like how do you, um, like if you're gonna sort out an investment, for example, no, what are the things that you need to look into when you are looking into an investment? Okay, so it's not just applicable to you as a founder of a startup, but also to you personally looking towards a particular investment. So there. So a little bit about me. So earlier they were talking about my legal credentials, no? But I'd also like to talk to you about my experience previously in the field of social entrepreneurship. So previously, the reason why I also got into YCLE was not because of the legal profession, but more of my experience as a social entrepreneur. So aside from founding b.i.t.e.s, no, I also had, well, two social enterprises before. One of them is a is uh, one of them, per to organizer, manufactures organizers in Lumbia, in Ecoville. So there's that, and then it got me into Yukon, I think, won the seed funding, and also Abacatran Social Enterprises, which won the 2013 Changemaker grant funding. So yeah, I really think that this topic is close to my heart because I am like you guys before. I was also into startups, and I hope that the things that I will tell you today is something that you write down on paper and would be useful to you. So first of all, what is a contract, no? So let's just go through this. So first of all, well, a contract is an agreement basically. It's a covenant between two parties. So necessarily, it needs to have consent. You need to consent to a contract. And this is something that you need to be really careful with because even if you did not exactly consent to the things that are written on the document, but you chose to sign it, you will still be bound, okay, by the things that are written on that contract. It takes a lot of um, going to court for you to reverse the things that you signed on to when you signed that document. So when someone just hands you a piece of paper, guys, please read it in full. If you do not understand it, ask the person, what do you mean by this? and then make that person write it on that piece of paper that he means a particular term. Okay, for example, naidili klaro sa contract, no? Something vague, for example, talking about shares, and you don't know what kind of shares that person means. For example, 20% shares. Is it 20% shares out of the total shares? Is it 20% shares out of your cut, or the contract, or the shares of your partner, for example? Um, or is that contract, or does he mean shares, preferred shares? Because preferred shares, you know, these are shares that do not have voting rights, okay, but they take the first, for example, when you release income, they're the first ones who will get dividends, the preferred shares. And some of them even, no, when you just say shares, they actually mean preferred shares that actually have consequences, like every month you need to pay them a particular amount. So it's more like a loan already. So it already becomes burdensome in your startup. So be really clear, because once you sign, you already indicate your consent. No? So I hope that it's something that you really remember. It's a very important element of a contract, consent. Next is the object or subject matter. This is also something that you need to look into with specificity. What is the object or the subject matter of the contract? In an investment contract, no, the subject matter are the investments, the shares of stock, okay? And then the cost or consideration, well, that's what you pay for the shares of stock. That's what the investors pay for the shares of stock. So for example, when we're talking about investment contract, no, 300,000 pesos for a 5% stake in your startup, okay? It means that 300,000 is the consideration, okay? And then the 5% share in your corporation, okay, or your startup, it becomes the subject matter of the contract. So make sure that it's something that you need to look into with specificity, okay? And also there are contracts which are complex, and they just hand them out to the startup founders and say, you just sign it and you already get, I don't know, 1 million pesos. Please read through all of the contents. Look at the terms and conditions of the contracts. Some contracts, they have general terms and conditions, okay, that are attached to the main contract that you will sign, okay? So make sure that that piece of paper in front of you, okay, it's something that you really understand, and it embodies the agreement between you and the investor, okay? So it's something that is very, very important. Now, however, well, there's the qualification below, no, in real contracts, meaning contracts involving real property. I don't think it's something that is quite common with startups these days. I don't think there's a startup here with you guys that deal with real property. But if some of you are dealing with real property, know that the delivery of the object, for example, the symbolic delivery of the object, like the title of that of that the title of that land or that real property, it needs to be delivered to that person. So it really needs a certificate of title, for example, or a deed of sale, for example, so that the contract will be perfected. No, so just some things to remember. Okay, at this point, I am taking questions regarding contracts. Do you have any? Okay, wala pa. Okay, I'll continue. Okay, so contract quick tips, no? So with regard to contracts in the everyday sense of things, not just in investment contracts, but contracts that you need to execute as startups, there are two things that you need to look into. Okay, number one, does this need to be in writing? Most often, okay, make sure that it's actually in writing so that you will be able to present that document in court and force the person not to follow through with the agreement. Okay, so first, does it need to be in writing? So what are the things that need to be in writing? Okay, so when a donation of personal property, the value exceeds 5,000 pesos, it needs to be in writing. And also, when you accept it, it also needs to be in writing. So maybe it's something that you will have to remember in your personal life, perhaps. But yeah, it's something that we need to remember. Next is a sale of a piece of land or any interest to an agent. So we need to, well, it's already self-explanatory. Next, agreements regarding payment of interest in contracts of loan. Okay, so contracts of loan, something I think that maybe some of you would like to think about to get startup funding. Okay, because sometimes the interest rate on loans are quite attractive. No, so you need to decide, right? As a startup, are you going to get a loan for your business that has a very but has, you know, like, well, you need to sort out the interest rate of that loan on one hand, or are you going to give this person, this investor, a piece of your business? Okay, so it's something you need to really sort out, you know, the risks involving the two. Okay, so an agreement regarding the payment of interest in contracts of loan, you need to write that down, even if the loan itself was something verbal. Okay, so the payment of interest, it has to be in a written document or else it's not valid. Next, well, anti-creases, I don't think it's something that is quite applicable here, you know, as startups. Next, contracts which must appear in a public document. These are the contracts that you need to notarize, to have them notarized, okay, by a notary public. So donation of real properties, partnership where immovable property or real rights are contributed to the common fund. So sometime in the future, no, you will acquire immovable or real property. Okay, when you contribute them to something, to a common fund, okay, you need that, like like a fund that is shared among partners. You need that to be in a public document to be valid. If it's not a public document, it's not valid. Next, as in contracts, well, the object is the transmission, okay, creation, modification, extinguishment of rights over removable property. So, well, just to simplify this, if it involves real property, have them notarized. Next is the, when you repudiate hereditary rights, it's more about succession. Okay, let's not touch into that. Next, the power to administer property. So make sure that when it involves property, okay, and any other power, okay, to a third person, well, you need to put that into a public document. So what do I mean by this concretely? You might think, oh, attorney, is it something that's limited to like physical property? Like when, for example, an administration of a business that's physical, no? Or what if mine is an app, for example, okay? When I want this app to be administered by someone else, for example, okay, or or any other power for that matter, you know, like you want it to be sold, for example. What does this mean? Well, your apps, no, they're actually in the realm of intellectual property. They're covered, the code of your program, it's protected by copyright law. Okay, the your logo, for example, it would be smart, okay, if you're really making it a serious progress in your business. Okay, make sure that you have your trademark, your logo registered. Okay, so those are properties, and for these intellectual properties, these assets, okay, basically to be able um, to enable a third person, someone that you trust, okay, to administer these properties, it has to appear in a public document. Okay, I hope that I'm clear on this matter. If not, make sure that you ask a question, or just interrupt me at any time. Next, the session of actions or rights proceeding from an act appearing in a public document. So when you cede your rights, when you give up your rights, okay, that already previously appeared in a notarized public document. Okay, when a public document grants you a right to administer property, for example, and you already want to let go of such right, to give up that right, your act of giving up that right has to appear as well in a public document. So I hope that's clear. If you don't find it clear at all, please, no, just say so. Next, okay, securities. So this is more in the realm now of investments. Okay, when you're talking about securities, you're talking about shares of stock. You're talking about as well investment securities like bonds. Like when you want to give a guarantee, okay, that you will pay a debt, for example, okay, like a debt instrument, that's a security, no? And in general, they're required to be registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission. So as a, like, just to be safe, no, most of the securities, they have to be registered with the SEC. Okay. Um well, this matter, no, it's actually a bit more uh like advanced in the stage of your startup. So when you're going to offer for sale or distribute to the public, if you're going to tell the public and advertise in the newspaper, for example, that you're selling shares of stock of your corporation or your startup, or you're selling bonds for your startup, then, well, look into whether you're covered by the exceptions, okay? And we will just breeze through that, no? Because I think that when you do get to that level, I think you can already afford to get quality advice, no, regarding this matter. So just to go through, no, what are the exceptions? Well, Monone, Section 9, any security issued or guaranteed by the government. So treasury bonds by the government, it's exempted. Government or country, guaranteed by the government of any country. So treasury bonds of another government. Certificates issued by a receiver or trustee in a bankruptcy. So when someone, well, for example, is under bankruptcy, no, well, you don't need to register um, those securities, those certificates issued by the receiver of that trust or trustee of that company that's undergoing bankruptcy. So I don't think it's something that you will encounter anyway. So there. And the reason for that bankruptcy thing, no, kay dili man siya public offering. You don't offer that thing to the public. It's a certificate already to existing uh, investors. Next, any security, okay, which is under the Office of the Insurance Commission. So when you are going to the public selling insurance, okay, you don't need to register that with the SEC. If there are insurance startups, I think that would be quite rare. Um, Also, if it's something about the HLURB, like real properties, for example, so make sure that you know um, the regulatory agency. Okay, if it's the Office of the Insurance Commission, the HLURB, or the BIR, then you don't. It's covered by the exception. You don't need to have those registered. So any security issued by a bank, well, that's because they're actually already regulated by the Banco Central, okay, the central bank. So they're not required anymore to register that security. So also other things, other classes of security, which the SEC finds that registration is not necessary. There are a lot of um, well, there are securities that are, well, in the future, no, would be exempted by the SEC. So it's good to keep posted. I tried. I actually read last night, no, the Startup Investment Act, hoping to find things that I can share with you today, you know. But, well, it's unfortunate that the Startup Investment Act, well, the first um, the Startup Investment Act itself, when it already became a law, okay, it provided for implementing rules and regulations to be made, you know, at a later time, also by Congress. So when the implementing rules and regulations came out, I also read that also last night. I discovered that it actually still requires the DTI to make a third set, like another set of rules to make it more specific with regard to benefits of the DTI, you know, that it bestows upon startups. So it's best to keep posted what are these benefits. It's unfortunate that this IRR isn't very specific, no? So yeah, this might involve something with regard to startup securities. Okay, next is the disclosure rule. If you are a startup, you register with the SEC, okay, you do a public offering, there are things that you need to disclose, like an annual report, periodic reports, okay, to the SEC. And then to equity holders, you need to give an annual report. Okay. I think this is something that's already a bit more advanced, no, with regard to your pace of growth as startups. This is a bit already in the further end of your journey as a startup. Okay, so let's discuss just quickly, excuse me, one-man corporation. So I think a lot of you here are quite curious, no, get going into this webinar. What are the things that are necessary, or what, like, kay, the things that are necessary to file for a one-man corporation aren't so different from the, like, how you file for a regular corporation. So what are we talking about? Like articles of incorporation, for example, right? The list of the list of your stockholders, okay? The list of your incorporators. It's not very different, but the difference is with one-man corporation, well, literally it says one man, so there's one single stockholder. But there are a lot of misconceptions. There's some misconceptions with regard to how, like, how do you conduct a one-man corporation? How do you enter a one-man corporation? So I simplified it for you. So I hope that this is something that you will really think through, no? Like, is it more advantageous for you to become, okay, to turn your business, excuse me, to turn your business into a one-man corporation? So what do you need to know about one-man corporation? So I will go through things that I, well, noted down last night, which I think might be relevant to you. So first is that you need to know, okay, that one-man corporations, what is the benefit for this? You become, okay, as a startup founder, okay, right now, you are at risk, no? Why? Because if your business, okay, incurs debt, okay, just your business, your startup incurs debt, okay, that debt is traceable right back to you, no? So I hope that's something that you realize, right? The risk that you're exposing yourself into, okay? If your business, for example, has violations, and those violations, okay, um, involve the payment of fines, okay? Well, that business of yours, okay, that liability will go to you. So ikaw magbayad, ana, okay? So that's something that has to be clear to you, no? You are absorbing the liability, okay? So you need to know that with one-man corporations, okay, you become an entity different from the business, okay? You're a stockholder, sure, but your liability, okay, but the liability of your business is not your personal liability. So your business, okay, with the violations that it incurred, the kay fines bayran, it's gonna close down. But you, okay, as a person, no, as a legal entity, you remain, okay, um, those liabilities, they don't go to you, okay. So that's the first thing I need you to take into consideration, that the reason why you're going to one-man corporation is to split you as an entity and the business. So a one-man corporation, like a regular domestic corporation in the Philippines, no, is of course also, okay, a limited liability corporation, okay. So what are you then? Okay, maybe the question, attorney, kung dili ko one-man corporation, what am I? Okay, well, you are a sole proprietorship. That's what you are. Okay, you're gonna absorb the debt. Okay, you aren't distanced from your business. Okay, as a sole proprietorship, well, You're just registered with the b.i.t.e.s. Okay, so the liability, it extends to your personal assets. So the liability, okay, when you don't have money to pay for those liabilities anymore, they can take your house. I'm not kidding. They can take your house. They can take your properties. They can have those they can have those sold off in an auction, okay, and then the proceeds will be used to pay for your debt, okay. So just something that you need to keep in mind. Next, well, while obviously one-man corporation, no, it's you are a single stockholder, okay, and then and then, well, it's also, well, is there an exception to this? Yeah, when you take in a foreign investor, okay, and your startup involves, well, public utilities, okay, then you still need to respect the 60-40, the 60% Filipino, 40% foreign, okay, and you need to adjust your shares accordingly. So you need to own 60% of that startup, and then the foreign shareholding should be limited to 40. Okay. Next is that, well, attorney, is it something that I can pass off as a regular domestic corporation to, for example, an investor? No, you cannot, because you can actually identify it by its name. For example, what's a regular business like Jollibee? Okay, Jollibee Incorporated. It has that .inc, okay, in the end as a suffix. So everyone knows it's incorporated as Jollibee. Okay. Well, with yours, there's the suffix OPC, one person corporation. There's that OPC. So you're actually identifiable as a one-man corporation. So maybe those investors, okay, when they see that, they say, okay, maybe, okay, it's just you. Okay. Okay, so it's not actually a large corporation with a lot of shareholders, but yeah, it's you. You're a startup, OPC. So it's there. Next is that something that you also need to realize now is that there is no minimum paid up capitalization. Okay, this is an invention of the new corporation code. So list that down. No, when you're entering into a one-man corporation, there's no minimum paid up capitalization. You don't need to shell out money showing that this is the capital of the business from the beginning. No, the government is encouraging one-person corporations. So there, a corporation, no, when it applies for registration, okay, the authorized capital stock or paid up stock, okay, well, you don't need that anymore for a one-man corporation. There's just some exceptions now, like if it's a lending business, you need, well, 1 million pesos as minimum paid up capital. But for regular startups, you don't need paid up capital. Next, perpetual corporate term. Now, this is something that applies to all corporations now with the new corporation code. Okay, well, now your corporate term, before it was 50 years, now it's indefinite. It's perpetual, your corporate term. Okay, now this is the misconception. No? When you say that one-man corporation, single stockholder, okay, well, when you register though, you cannot register by yourself as alone, okay? Under the revised corporation code, registering one-person corporation in the Philippines, it requires the appointment of a nominee. So you're not technically alone. Okay, you need a nominee. No, who is this nominee? A nominee is a person who will continue your business. Okay, so when you're a startup and then you want your one-person corporation, when you register with the SEC, okay, make sure that you have identified a nominee. Okay, so technically it's two of you that are required to start the one-man corporation, although technically still you're the sole stockholder of that corporation. Okay, so who is this nominee? This nominee is the person, okay, that, well, when you die, okay, or incapacitated, this person will continue your corporation behind. They're made so that there is continuity of the corporate existence, even if a stockholder dies. Now, you're the only stockholder. That's why our laws require you to have a nominee. So make sure that you need to put that in mind. No, required ang nominee. Next is that, well, you can actually convert, okay, into a regular corporation. And a regular corporation as well can convert itself into a one-man corporation. So what do you need to do? What do you need to remember? And I think it's something that you need to write down. Maybe in the future, this might be useful as well. No? When the cause which motivated you to become a regular corporation, like 5 investors, for example, okay, will want to invest with your one-man corporation, okay? Within 60 days, you need to notify the SEC, okay, that you will change from a one-man corporation to a regular corporation. Why? What's the effect? Well, the effect is this. When you already move towards a regular corporation, there are things that will change. For example, the .inc suffix, it will already be changed. The .opc, it will be changed into .inc, for example. Okay, you will already look more like a bigger corporation. No, there are benefits to it. So yeah, also the reportorial requirements as well would already be changed. So there are definite changes when you move up to a regular corporation or from a regular corporation to a one-man corporation. So make sure that you do that with the SEC within 60 days from the circumstance popping up, no, that would lead to the conversion. So, okay, so next and lastly on this topic of one-man corporation, okay, a one-man corporation in the Philippines, what does it require when you report it? Okay, there are reportorial requirements. I don't want to fool you guys into thinking, okay, I entered a one-man corporation, limited liability. There are responsibilities for this, no? So first would be, well, audited financial statements. When? Within 120 days. Okay, so really, guys, no, it's something that you need to really seriously consider. If your business is already becoming serious, you want to be a one-man corporation, there are things that you need to do, like this one, audited financial statements within 120 days. Unless the assets or total liabilities, well, it does not exceed 600,000. So write that down, no? You only do this if it already exceeds 600,000. Your total assets or total liabilities, okay? Either of them. If they exceed 600,000, you already need to start filing audited financial statements. Okay, next is that the report containing explanations or comments, okay, on those line items with your audited financial statements, it also needs to be reported as well. And then disclosure of the self-dealings and related party transactions. This is a bit technical. At length, I cannot discuss it here, but yeah, if it's something that would be applicable to you, it's best to consult a lawyer about this, okay? Then other SEC reports. The SEC reports, they kind of change on a year-on-year basis, so it's best to keep updated, no? But your audited financial statements and the requirement, no, of those explanations, the explainers of your line items, it's something that is constant, okay? So that's on the topic of one-man corporation. Do you have questions regarding this topic? Okay. So important tip, no, something that I need to share with you. You actually need to get a lawyer on these 3 things, okay? Because you cannot wing it. For example, the first is with regard to your intellectual property, your copyrights, your trademarks, and your patents. Okay, because these are rather technical in nature. Is it a patent? Is it something patentable? Is it something that is trademarkable? Is it something that's copyrightable? These are usually questions of law. These are questions of law. So for copyrights, good for copyrights because they're actually protected from the inception of your startup. So what are these? The code of your your app. Yeah, the code of your app. Okay, it's something that you own as a copyright. So if you paid a programmer, if you paid a programmer to code for you, that code is your copyright. Okay. Next, your trademark. So your logo, that's part as well of your intellectual property. With regard to your patents, what are patents? Well, it's basically how do I simplify this? Well, first requisite, it has to be novel, it has to be new, no? It has to have industrial application, okay? So, well, in a nutshell, no, patents are things that are, well, how do you say this? Patents, it's the protection for mechanisms, it's protection for innovative things with industrial application. So yeah, that's why it's best to look into your intellectual property to determine what's the proper protection for it, no. And then also the length of their protection varies. Okay, copyrights covered for a lot longer than trademarks, which is trademarks I think renewable every 5 years, and then patents maximum of 20 years, and then copyrights it's at least I think 60 years, even after the death of the author of the copyright. So don't quote me on that, no. Just on a nutshell, that's how important intellectual properties are. Okay, and when you sell these intellectual properties, okay, it's something that you really need to get legal help with. Next, with your articles of incorporation, this is a bit difficult to change if you get it wrong from the get-go. Okay, I already put it there, okay? Because with the articles of incorporation, guys, it is where you put your purpose clause, or the what is your business about? What does it do? What is the purpose of your business? And if you do activities that are different from the stated purpose clause, that are not reasonably necessary for the for meeting the purpose of the business, then you're already violating the articles of incorporation. Okay, so you really need to look into the articles of incorporation. Okay, sit down with a lawyer and talk about it. Okay, or at least sit down with an expert on articles of incorporation. But usually you need to get, you need to get a lawyer for this. Okay, and then also within the articles of incorporation, this is where you need to specify things like preferred shares or common shares. Okay, common shares, those are the regular shares. These are shares that have voting rights. Okay, you can vote for who are the board of directors, for example. When you're looking into uh, when you have a corporate meeting, no, these are the shares that have voting rights. So whether or not you're gonna change your business or your purpose clause, the common shares, they're the ones that have voting rights over that. Preferred shares, these are shares, okay, which have rights that are above the common shares in terms of receiving dividends. Okay, so for example, um, well, there are profit in your business. There's profit. Okay, the preferred shareholders, they're the ones that get the dividends first. Okay, in case of dissolution, okay, the business would already wind up. Okay, liquidate, for example. The in those proceedings, the creditors, they get paid first, and then the preferred shareholders, and then those that are holders of the common stock. Okay, but they do not have voting rights. So that's the difference, no? Basically with the common shares and preferred shares.
Attorney,
Yes, yes,
can I just interrupt?
yes,
Before we
please.
proceed with that, I think Umaroa is raising her hand.
Okay, please.
Okay,
Yes, your question.
okay, Uma, your question, please.
I don't hear anything.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry. I just thought that the screen was stuck earlier because
okay,
all I could see was one man corporation at the top.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I just
Okay, there's
wanted to.
okay. Thank you, Uma. Attorney, there's also a question in the chat box from RG.
Okay.
It's actually connected with contracts earlier.
Yes, yes.
He's asking, yes. So I'm just going to relay the question. Does it matter if it is printed or if it is just handwritten?
Okay, good question. No, I really like that question. Okay, it doesn't matter. Okay, if it's printed with a nice font, it doesn't matter. As long as you can read it, okay, when the contents of the contract is readable to you, then it's good. I can even say that handwritten contracts would hold up more in court, basically because you cannot deny the handwriting of the person who wrote it. So for example, when the investor just wrote down the on that piece of paper, your terms of agreement, and then you also wrote something there, and then you both signed it, okay? That person cannot deny in court, for example, with a handwriting expert, giving an expert testimony on the matter of whether or not it's the handwriting of that person, okay? When it's presented in court, it's actually more verifiable because the handwriting is there, okay? The law only says it needs to be written down. It doesn't matter if it's printed or not. As long as you, of course, signed it, by hand. If it's a digital signature, then there are some qualifications, for example, like with our e-commerce act, it says that e-signatures are the functional equivalent of your normal signature, okay? But in reality, those signatures, they can just be attached to the email, like you screenshot lang and then you cut, splice it, put it on the document. So there's doubt as to the veracity of those documents, no? But yeah, it's good practice to really sign it by hand, okay? If it's an important document, make sure that you just don't fax your signature or put a digital signature. It's good. It's a better practice if there's actually a physical document and you all sign it, okay? So thank you for that question. Okay, so again, on the articles of incorporation, make sure that you get it right from the get-go. There are aspects here that have long-term repercussions for your startup. And lastly, the data privacy officer. I cannot stress this more than enough. In terms of your startup, okay, you really want to avoid financially crippling penalties, okay? So what are these financially crippling penalties? Aside from the ones that I've discussed previously, that you really, like when you're a startup, okay, and you already incur violations, and then voila, and then your business, it cannot pay for those violations, the liability it incurs to you personally, okay? Especially when it's a sole proprietorship, you have the most risk. They can levy on your properties, like your house, okay? Like your car, they can sell it in an auction, okay? So one of these financially crippling violations is if you violate the Data Privacy Act, okay? Well, I'm also a data privacy speaker, so I cannot stress this more than enough, no? And it's especially relevant now, okay? That with regard to data privacy, you really need to get a data privacy officer to look at your data privacy policies. If you access my own, well, it's not an app, it's a chatbot on Messenger, b.i.t.e.s, okay, we take it as personal information when someone interacts with our chatbot. So we put a disclaimer there that we have the right, okay, that when you interact with us, with this app, you are giving up, okay, you are consenting to letting us process your data. You're consenting to letting us access and process your data for our purposes, okay? So these are technical things that needs a lawyer to look into, a data privacy officer to look into, no? So make sure that you get someone at least to help you get through all of them at once, okay? So that's very important, data privacy. I cannot talk to you the specifics of this because this is we have a time. So just remember these 3 tips, no? What you need to get a lawyer for. The other things, not so much, okay? The other things you don't really need a lawyer for. Yes?
Attorney, we have another question in the chat,
Yes,
chat
please.
box. Okay, so I'll just relay it again.
Thank
So,
you.
provided that the corporation shall not solicit, accept, or take investments, placements from the public, neither shall it issue investment contracts. So, this is part of AOI of Dirtbug. So, does it mean that they can't open for investments then?
Okay. No, well, it's like this, no? When you are issuing bonds, okay, it's not something that is secret because bonds, these are documents that you just don't, that are marketable securities, no? because for example, bonds or shares of stock, these are things that once you buy it, okay, like for example, I'm the investor and then I buy it, I buy the shares of stock or the bond, for example, the corporate bond from that startup. These are things that I have the right actually to sell to someone, to market it, and the price fluctuates, no? But it's the same share, it's the same bond. That's why there's an incentive for the government to protect it, okay? So to answer your question, the answer is, well, by nature, it is public in nature to issue shares, to issue bonds. That's why it's something that has to be registered, okay? When you are selling shares, okay, a certificate of shares to just a particular person, then it's something that only, then the only regulatory agency that that has to look into that transaction, no, is the SEC. But when you involve bonds, for example, and you sell that bond, okay, to people, okay, then that's something that already takes into the nature of a public investment. So that's what you need, the registration of that investment for, okay. So if it's something that now, like, you just talk to someone and say, okay, so I'm going to give you 30% shares, let's incorporate now. So part to a person, that investor is part of your incorporation, then you don't need to have a security registered, because from the get-go, that person already is part of your business. But when you issue certificate of shares of stock, that's something that needs to be registered with the SEC. So I hope that's clear, no? Is I, who asked the question? Did I answer your question?
Anyone from Dirt Bags?
Okay na? Or
Yeah. Wala pa siguro sila I follow up. Clear daw, attorney. So
okay,
thank
thank
you,
you.
Dirt
Okay.
Bag.
So next, no, this is something that I asked Rhea about. Like, what are the common questions that you guys have? Next is, how can you protect your shares? So it depends. Well, first and foremost, no, you can protect your shares by being definite with the with how much shares do you really have in the business. You put it on paper. So what does this mean? If you're a sole proprietorship and the investor doesn't want you to incorporate and just wants a profit sharing agreement in exchange for a sum of money, for example, okay, then technically that person takes, well, not a part of your business, but part of your profit, okay? So this legal quandary, this unclear legal state, okay, it's something that you need to clarify. That's why it's best to put it on paper. What are your terms? Does this person really own part of your business, or does that person become a co-owner, or only gets part of the profit shares, or is this person wanting, for example, like a 250% return on his investment, and once paid, wala na siya. Okay, these are things that you need to be definite with. So protect yourself first with very clear written agreements. Okay, that's first. Next is that if you want to protect your control, okay, so this is the issue of control. Well, you need to look into your voting rights. You need to protect your voting rights. Okay. So this is something that how do I say this now? Like, you need to look into, well, quite technical aspects. Like, for example, you want to retain control over your corporation. Okay, you issue preferred shares. Okay, that's why when you have preferred shares, then that preferred shareholder does not have voting rights. So who gets to have a say with the who gets to be who gets to have a say kinsa ang CEO of your startup, okay? Then those who have common shares with voting rights, of course, are the only ones that can decide on that matter. Your investor, okay, who only has preferred shares cannot decide on that matter. So that's something that I hope is clear for you guys, no? Na there are two primary ways that you can protect your shares, because shares, well, it's a piece of the business, and not just a piece of the business, no, but it also has accompanying voting rights. And some corporations even, they make the shareholders give up their voting rights. There are corporations that are like that. Okay, I think even Facebook does that, no? Like, even if Mark Zuckerberg does not own the majority, um, does not own like 50% plus one majority, but the voting rights are given to him, something like that, an arrangement. I'm not too sure about that. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, it's best if it's clear and you are very specific as to your voting rights, because voting rights of shares, that's sometimes even more vital than the share itself. So I hope it's something that you remember. Next, how to know if it's a good investment. Okay, something as well that a question that Rhea gathered, no, beforehand. Okay, how to know if it's a good investment? There are many factors. I don't want to name names, but there are a lot of networking investments, okay, that might be, okay, pyramid scams or pyramid schemes, and you need to stay away from those. Okay, so stick to the more legal ones. So first is it registered? So investment securities, they have to be registered with the SEC. If it's not registered with the SEC, for some reason that they're giving, like dili man ni siya registered kay foreign man ni nga kuan, foreign investment. Well, unless it's something like a commodity like gold, for example, something physical, no, something you invest in, it it doesn't really matter, no. If it's not registered, stay away from it. Okay, that's a really good rule of thumb. Guy, there are a lot of scams before. They tell you some crazy thing like it's a foreign investment, that's why it's not registered. Usually they're not registered simply because, okay, they're trying to scam you, okay? Because the SEC will look into, okay, the security and says, okay, this looks more like pyramiding. So, okay, we will not register this. So make sure that it's registered, okay? Next is that one way to spot a scam as well is that the rate of return is absolutely ridiculous, guys. Absolutely ridiculous. Like, in a week, you get double your money, for example. Okay, so that's a red flag already. Next, if it involves something, getting people to invest. So for example, for you to enter into that business, for example, you need to pay your recruiter money, and you also need to bring in two people into the business that will also pay money. That's classic pyramiding, no, guys? So if it's not registered and it requires you pag yun, crazy rate of return, and then if it requires you pag yun to invest, take extra precaution. Actually, my advice is to just avoid it. Okay, so there. There are also other scams that prey on people's ignorance, like cryptocurrencies. It's true, they're giving you something in return, like a cryptocurrency. But what is the value of that cryptocurrency? So an example would be Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not just a cryptocurrency, but also something that you can see the price online. It changes. You can search it in Google, for example, how much the price of Bitcoin is. But in terms, so there is really a valuation for that investment, if you do call it an investment, no? But what about other cryptocurrencies, like the Pac-Man cryptocurrency? Si Manny Pacquiao, he has a cryptocurrency, Pac coins. I'm not making this up, guys. You can Google it. It's true. He has Pac coins, and I don't know if it's still valued anything at the moment. So, kato, he had an initial coin offering a year or two ago, and then I don't know what the value is now. It's not a scam per se, no, but you cannot really guarantee the rate of return as well. So for me, it's a bad investment. So those are factors that you need to look into, okay? So make sure it's registered, make sure that the rate of return is not crazy. And if it involves you getting people to invest, it's usually a scam. Okay. Next, different kinds of investments. The classifications vary. So there are marketable securities, okay, like corporate bonds, they're like shares, no, and there are also assets of the business. There are also assets that you can acquire. Like some people argue that um, a house, for example, is an investment, is an asset. Some people think that a house actually just it doesn't earn. Okay, you get expenses out of it, so it's more of a liability. Nga na. I mean, sa accounting, it's not argued. A house is an asset. Okay, it's a real property, an asset. Okay, but in your investment philosophy, it's something that you need to look into. Okay, classifications vary, but usually the rate of return is quite commensurate with the risk that's involved in the business. So when we're talking about bonds, okay, so bonds, they are less risky than shares because shares of stock, guys, the value can go up or down. Okay, you don't know if when you wake up the next day if the business is still there or did it already, go under. So bonds are usually more, how do I say it? They're more secure than shares of stock. But even in the bond classification, there are classifications of bonds, no? Like there are the treasury bonds, those are issued by the government. You can be sure that those treasury bonds, they will be paid to you by the government. So usually treasury bonds, they're of a lower interest rate than other corporate bonds. But I really rank them at the top. Like one of the safest investments is a treasury bond. So if the treasury bond, if the interest rate increases, a lot of people actually sell stock and buy treasury bonds. And then you can see that when the treasury bond interest rate goes up, the shares of stock dip on average. No, like in the stock market, they would experience a dip. So with the treasury bonds at the top, diba, you're sure to be paid by the government because the government prints money anyway, right? So it's sure that you will be paid. So after that, here are the corporate bonds. And within the corporate bond classification, there's still the junk bonds. Okay. So junk bonds, they are more risky than the normal blue chip corporate bonds. So for example, it's a corporate bond, Jollibee issues corporate bonds. You're quite sure, well, not 100% sure, but like 95, 98, 99% sure that you will be paid. So they have a lower interest rate than the junk bonds. Junk bonds quite risky. Okay, you don't know if you wake up that the bonds are still gonna get paid. Oh, so, diba? So the interest rate is higher. Okay. Next, in terms of your shares, there are classifications of shares as well. In terms of um, dividends, okay. I also when the company goes under, for example, there's also we respect the hierarchy of the bonds. Okay, so those that are junk bonds are at the bottom. Okay, right before the preferred shareholders, and then below that the common shareholders. Okay, so junk bonds and then normal corporate bonds at the top, like in the hierarchy in the bond classification of a corporation. So when the corporation goes under, those that are creditors of the regular corporate bonds, they get paid first. After that, junk bonds. After that, preferred shareholders, they get paid. And then after that, the common shareholders. So common shareholders usually at the bottom. Okay. So again, so now we're going to move on to the shares. So with shares of stock as an investment, we're already talking more about preferred shares or common shares. So not all, so no, now that we know that shares are not all equal, no, there are trade-offs. So preferred shares, they're preferred as to dividends and as to the liquidation. So when there are payouts, they get to be paid first. And also when the business already winds down, they also get paid first before the common shareholders, but always after the bonds are paid out. Okay, the creditors are paid out first. Okay, so that's the preferred shares. And then at the bottom, common shareholders. They're the regular owners of the business. They own, well, the preferred shares also own a piece of the business, but they do not have voting rights. But the preferred shareholders, they're the ones that, well, own a piece of the business, has the voting rights, and can decide on a lot of matters in the corporation, like agreeing to a merger, consolidation, those things, okay? So that's on a nutshell, no, with regard to preferred shares versus voting, preferred shares versus common shares. So that's technically the different kinds of investments. There's also katong PDL, the ones that I think you remember with the Rappler issue, no? It's a way to skirt the 60/40 requirement. I don't recommend it. Just go for the more clearly defined um, terms like shares, preferred shares, common shares, bonds, if you're going to issue bonds as well. So there. Next, when is the right time to get investments? So it depends, okay? That's why you need to really consult a professional as to the specifics of your business. When should you issue investments or get investments? Okay. Okay, so this one, oh, this part of the slide not updated, no? Just read and don't note the sentence below. Just kana lang it depends, and but a good indicator is looking into retained earnings. So when are you going to get investment? So this is on the point of view of your startup, of your business, looking into getting investments, okay? And assuming that you're a corporation, a good indicator is to look into your retained earnings. So, diba, the corporation, it gives out money in the term in by way of dividends. That corporation, okay, it can choose not to pay out dividends when there's income, but retain the earnings. That's what we call the retained earnings, literally, no? And then it comes to a point that the retained earnings are already too much. It's not reinvested back into the business, okay? But it's just there, you know? So when the retained earnings are at a surplus, it's money that is not used. So make sure that you use it to invest. Otherwise, it's already just there, no? And then the inflation is going up and up. So your money, your retained earnings actually loses value over time. So make sure, okay, that you look into the retained earnings. If surplus good in yung retained earnings, okay, that's when you start, like, sobra na yung retained earnings, should I pay out dividends? Not yet. So, okay, I'll just, I also don't want to reinvest into the business. So retained earnings, I'm going to, okay, get investments. Use the retained earnings to get investments. So that's actually a good guide to get investments, okay? Basta the reason why you need to get investments is for you to beat the inflation rate para dili mag-lose value ang imong money that you've earned, okay? So get investments. What do they need to prepare for investment? At the most basic level, complete unbiased information. Okay, that's what you need to prepare for. Because if you just sit down with someone and says, open-minded baka, you know, and then the person starts telling you, oh, with this one, you're gonna get this rate of return, you also need to look into those that are already existing na investors of that instrument. So for example, no, we call this mutual funds. It's basically a pot of money that is used, okay? So people, so you invest in that mutual fund. Your money goes into this pot of money that is being used to buy stocks. So it's a portfolio of stocks, okay? And then this portfolio of stocks, it has kanang rate of return, di ba? Like na stocks okay, may stocks na ginansya, may stocks lugi, no? So but cumulatively kay na earning. Okay? So it's managed by a professional, okay, mutual funds, and then it has a performance rate. Sometimes the performance rate, it's something that they publicize. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they massage it. Like, dako kayo, 32% na increase, no? And then, gamay kay nga font na 2017. Okay, 2018, 2019, lugi man din sila, no? Like, nagnaog din ang value sa fund. So, you really need to look into complete unbiased information. Talk to existing investors. How is this mutual fund going? Should they invest? Okay. How do they treat people? For example, if it's kanang UITF, kanang insurance plus portfolio management sa kanang stock, like mutual fund plus insurance, na instrument, there is something like that, no, issued by, well, financial institutions. Banks even issue that, no. So in those terms, no, it is good that you not just ask about the part about the performance of the mutual fund, but also ask about how do they treat ang ilang mga beneficiaries sa insurance. Okay? Are they the kind of insurers bitaw na kuan kanang dili diretso maghatag sa insurance, so di ba, insurance premium man kanang they would really look for a way not to pay the insurance payout. So you need to look into towards complete unbiased information, not just get information from one source. Okay, this is advice that goes for all investments. Okay, so that's the end of it, no. Good luck. I wish you all well in your business. You can screenshot my it's like business card, kibali. So kini siya, I allot free legal consultation every Sunday evening for startups, just for you guys, no. It's free, and then but diba, free na gani. Don't ask me for basic legal information that you can find sa b.i.t.e.s. Okay, b.i.t.e.s is it's my app on my chatbot on Messenger. So if it's something that can be answered by b.i.t.e.s, don't ask me those things anymore. Okay, just things that you think are quite important, because I really want to help you, no, because this is my advocacy, but something that's close to my heart. Okay, that's close to my heart as a former entrepreneur. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Atty. Daba. That was so kind of you, and also that presentation was very informative. So I hope that you, incubatees, took advantage and took notes of it. Okay, so we'll proceed with our Q&A session. We'll start with Umaroa since she raised her hand a while ago.
Sir,
Yes.
with regards to the data privacy officer, what kind of the qualifications should we consider for that position?
Okay. So first of all, you need to ask yourself, no, do you need a data privacy officer? So you only need a data privacy officer if your business involves kanang data processing of personal information. Okay? So now, to directly answer your question, what are the qualifications? Dili man kailangan lawyer and data privacy officer, but the data privacy officer needs to know the Data Privacy Act in its entirety. Kay kanang data privacy officer, that person will draft your disclaimers when kana for example, there's a fill up, like a sign up form that you give to your user. Okay, kanang sign up form, it already needs to have the disclaimer of the data privacy disclaimer there, and the data privacy officer, okay, must compose it in a way na dili mo mahimo legally liable if in the future that personal data maingon din tong katong user na hala, this data I did not consent, kulang ang imong disclaimer, di ba? So that's one consideration. Next consideration is that does that data privacy officer know how to ano bitong ensure that the personal data, okay, is protected. Now, kining protection, this is actually a technical na it has a technical meaning, no? Kay kining protection, it's not just about making sure na dili mahack ang imong system, no? But it also requires the data privacy officer to be very vigilant with the data. Kay the Data Privacy Act actually um, specifies na you cannot keep that data for you cannot keep that data after you've processed it and used it for its purpose. And that purpose, you can actually state a disclaimer that the data subject, the person giving the personal data, no, is signing on to. Okay, so what's a good example about this? Like now may company nga computer, and then kining data privacy officer ay kining na personal data, of course, because people sign up and it's saved into that computer, no? And then the data privacy officer forgot kay nahuman naman process ang data. Kabulo na mo kung kinsa sa inyong users are more likely, for example, to do a certain activity that you will send an email to, like ma-target na nimo bitaw ingana like na kay murag profile of this person already interacts with you. You already met the basic na kanang the basic purpose of the personal data. And then, the data privacy officer forgot to delete katong personal data. And then after that, no, kay something happened with the computer. Like, ipaayo. And then the hard disk, kay na may personal data there, di ba? And then, ang hard disk, gi-copy sa katong, asa gipaayo ang katong computer. Gi-copy ang katong hard drive, ang iyang content. Di ba? And then, murag identity theft. Di ba? So, use for identity theft. So you will be liable. No, your business will be liable. You yourself actually might be exposed to liability as well. A data privacy officer as well will be exposed to liability. Kay you guys did not protect that information. It's very critical ang job sa data privacy officer. It's not just making sure that it complies. No, compliance is very technical. So, kana siya, make sure that the data privacy officer knows about these things. So, Moto, that I hope it answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so thank you, Uma. I have another. This one's given to me privately. How does SEC classify or define a business as startup? Should our SEC registration or AOI indicate the word startup?
No, man, because well, startups, well, as a term, no, it's only useful in the context of the Startup Investment Act, in the context of getting certain benefits from government agencies like DTI, being part of, for example, certain eco zones, okay, that are incentivized by government, okay. But out of that narrow na the benefits for startups, a startup is no different from a corporation that is from any business that is incorporating in the SEC. Okay, so it's not needed, no, to be indicated na startup. Do you want to put the word startup? No one's gonna stop you. Okay, but does it have a legal effect in terms of registering your corporation? It doesn't really have a legal effect. Okay, so that's the answer. No, it has an effect as to the benefit that you will get out of the Startup Investment Act, and I've already discussed earlier as well, that nana siya implementing rules and regulations which actually needs more specific na mga na kanang issuances from DTI and the other government agencies like b.i.t.e.s, for example, no, for those things sa Startup Investment Act to be implemented, no. And since this is not as well kanang wala na kayo na ako gi-focus sa Startup Investment Act kay taas kaayo, no. But yeah, in a nutshell, that's what it is. In terms of katong just to answer your question, na like with regard to your start, you need to indicate it. No, but is it illegal? No, not as well. So it's your option to put it sa inyong articles of incorporation.
Okay, thank you for that, attorney. We have another one from Cards of Dirtbag. It says, is it okay to show our AOI and bylaws to potential investors in case they ask for it? What will the investor gain of getting hold of this document?
Okay, good question. Wait lang. Articles of incorporation and bylaws? Bylaws ba to ang question?
Yes,
Or,
attorney.
okay. Well, yeah, absolutely. Kay articles of incorporation, no, I don't know why you will keep it a secret, imong articles of incorporation. And also ang bylaws, it's a good indicator of the corporate culture within your organization. So, the principles that you have as an organization, it's a good indicator. So I really think that it's something that you need to show to your investors, to show that you're really sincere as well with your business, no. Okay, ang articles of incorporation, kuan siya, kanang it's a document that is meant to be read by investors. So kanina lang akong question to that person who asked the question, no, para mas ma-answer na ako ang question. What is your line of business and what do you think are the risks that are involved with it? Kaya I don't see a risk as of now, but is there a risk that kanang hadlok ka, like you're afraid na this investor will take advantage or something? Please let me know para ma-answer na ako.
Okay, Cards, do you want to answer that question of Attorney Daba?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, attorney. Thank you for answering that question. Further, I just, kumbaga, nabalaka lang ko ba? Because I thought that it's supposed to be kept, no? Because there are information there that pertains to our sharing of, the stocks, right? Stock sharing. So also the authorized capital is there. I'm just worried that if we started with, if we put value to our startup at this much, it might discourage these investors if they have to ask about the valuation, because they might ask how we value our startup this high when our paid up capital is this much only. So I was thinking like it might be okay to show, but at least on a later stage already of negotiation, not at the very early stage.
Okay. I understand your risk, no? Thank you. So if you choose not to show your articles of incorporation because you don't want to show a particular valuation, no, of your corporation, then you're free to do that, no. However, what I think though is this, like investors, they know na the valuation, okay, the valuation mong good of articles of incorporation, usually it is expressed in terms of percentages, and then the amount, it's not so much looked into by the investor. Okay, of course, when another investor at the later stage, at a later time, okay, would put in money and say, okay, I put in 5 million pesos as well, just as your other investor. So I also want something kanang share nga ingana pud gud ako, di ba? So in that sense, no, kanang an investor should realize na, especially if the investor is already a veteran na investor, okay, it's not something na it should affect the valuation. What should affect the valuation is, of course, the performance of your business and what is the added value of his investment. So, for example, if 5 million pesos doesn't really help much with your startup, then 5%, 10%. If it's absolutely vital for your startup, then you should already consider giving 25% shares, 20% shares to that person. No? So, kana siya, what you ultimately decide as to whether or not you will show your articles of incorporation is up to you. What you also, should you redact parts of your articles of incorporation? It is not prohibited by law to say na, look, we're not going to disclose how much ang among paid in capital. We're not going to disclose that, okay? That's also something that's well, it's not illegal, no, to do that. So you can also, that's also an option for you. And then everything else na you want to show na dili paid in capital, na dili critical, that you think is critical, no? Then kato, mo to may ipakita sa sa investor. It's not illegal to redact or censor bits of it that have critical information, that you feel have critical information, okay? To me, I don't think it's risky to show katong authorized to show among paid in capital, okay, the authorized capital stock. I don't think it's risky, but if you think it's risky, it's up to you, okay? Just know na it's konsya kanang the valuation shouldn't be based on the valuation sa kanang authorized capital stock or the paid in capital. I disagree with that practice. If your investor does that, that's quite sketchy for me. So there's that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, attorney. Speaking of shares and percentages, how much equity pala should we give up to our investors?
Again, no, there's no rule of thumb. How much equity? It depends really. Kay the shares of stock, when you give up equity, no, you're giving up literally a piece of your business. And then also the investor, when the investor buys common shares, no, not just preferred shares, but common shares, that investor really wants to be part of your business, no. You also have to look into what does this investor add to the table. Is this investor really good with marketing? Is this investor already has a network, an existing network of businesses that would add value to my startup? Okay, if so, then you will, it already stands to reason that you will, well, naturally give up a bit more shares to that investor. But if this investor is totally just bankrolling your business, no, not that it's not helpful, but of course it's quite helpful to have money, right, in your business. The infusion of capital into your business, if it's absolutely vital for your business. For example, if your startup requires particular capitalization for you to run a particular feature in your app, then reflect it with the shares. Give that person 10%, 20%, 25% shares. Okay, but if you think na the capital infusion is not very helpful, reflect it as well. If you don't think it's absolutely helpful, 5% shares. It's a matter of negotiation, no? When you determine. And then once you've already determined the shares, you also need to look into what kind of shares would you give this person. Okay, if the person is really learned with business, if the investor is really learned with the business, like ang kining person is very experienced, for example, no? You it stands to reason then na you give the person common shares, give the person voting rights, because yung voting rights kay makatabang with the business, okay? And then when a future investor comes along, di ba? Na murag daghan lagi kwarta pero medyo questionable ang voting rights, di ba? Gusto gyud yung common shares. At least when it comes to the board of directors na mag-vote na mo, very important na aspects of your corporation, you have that person by your side, that knowledgeable investor, di ba? Voting for kanang the correct decision to make in very critical na aspects of business. If the person then is not very knowledgeable with business but has a lot of money, ano bitaw, he's just in there for your startup for the money, ano bitaw, really wants a piece of the business, give the person preferred shares. Okay, preferred shares, they have a stated par value. Okay, don't forget that. Okay, and then, well, as we go back, no, preferred shares do not have voting rights. So that person, guys, no, kanang preferred shares, limited ang iyang power with the board of directors. But kato, he has all the benefits of being a preferred shareholder. So those things, no, those considerations.
Okay, in connection to that, attorney, we have, I think, connected question. Pwede ba i-grant ang equity shares to a group rather than individually? We work with a group of programmers and agree they own a percentage of the company.
Okay, that's a very good question, no? So I'll just rephrase the question and then tell me if I got the sense right. What you want to say, what you're asking me is that, can you give common shares to a group of people? Sakto ba?
Kit?
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay.
Common shares with pati decision making.
Decision making. Actually, decision making, it comes with the common shares, no? Okay, kung common shareholder ka, you also get representation sa board of directors sa inyong corporation. Now, my follow-up question, just so I can really answer your question, is this group of programmers, are they under a corporation or they're just literally a group of programmers?
They've been working for a while na. They have a group but dili siya registered sa SEC or whatsoever.
Okay, good. Okay. So my answer to that is no. You cannot give. Actually, you cannot donate anything at all by law. Okay, I cannot, for example, give this tablet to an unregistered person, to a group of persons. I cannot, for example, there's a person, no? Dato kay siya, wala siya wala siya kanang heirs. Wala na siya parents, wala siya child, for example, namatay siya, ingon siya nga ihatag na ako kini nga fraternity, alpha, whatever. Nga na. Turns out that fraternity dili registered sa SEC, dili siya incorporated, no? He cannot give money to that corporation. So in the same way, you cannot give shares. You cannot transact or do business with simply a group of people, no? Okay, do not do that. Do not give shares to this group of programmers because they're not registered. No one knows how much each of them gets in terms of the shares. Is it equal? Is it katong usa kay mas dagan iyang na code, does he get more shares than the others? What if some of them dies, di ba? Does that mean na ang iyang heir, ang iyang estate ang magdawat sa co-owned part of the shares? So those considerations, no? Strictly speaking, you cannot give anything to an unregistered group. You will be questioned in court, for example. But if what you truly mean by your agreement is a co-ownership, it means that all of them, as a group, co-owns the entirety of the stock of shares that you have. Okay, that's a very weird setup. I've never encountered that. No, in my experience, I've never encountered that. It's weird. Avoid it. Tell them na pag-incorporate na lang, or you give them each a specific number of shares. So that's my advice for you.
Thank you, sir, sa advice.
Okay, any other questions?
I have, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes.
proceed, Ted.
Hi, sir. It is also connected with Sir Kit's question, but for us is kami ang bali kami ang dili registered, and then there is a company that want to invest in our startup, which is nag-wonder me why inana sila ka-agreed nga mag-invest sa amuha, which is dili pa may registered sa ilahang ay sa in any sec or registration nga amo ang ginahandulan.
Okay.
So,
Unsa mo question?
kuan ko ka nang bali bitaw siya, sir, bali ilahang circuit is sila ang registered din na sila yung programmers nga dili registered. So katong shares, with regard to shares, so bali ang sa amoa
Yes.
kami ang owner sa app din na ay company nga registered,
Yes.
which is gusto mag-invest sa amoa. So unsa amo ang any advice kung unsa mo buhaton bitaw, sir?
Actually, kay very general imong question, no?
Yes, sir.
Gusto ka na mag-invest sa imuha ang katong company?
Yes, sir. They offered investment
Yes, yes.
on our startup, which is
Yes.
dili pa may registered. So is there any instance nga in a long run, which is sila man ang registered din na sila'y butang ta nakahatag na mi og kanang equity or shares within ay sa ilaha, naa ba sila'y kuano na, sir, nga bali sila na mag-handle dayon sa amoa kay in terms of kanang registration is wala pa man gud ang amoa, sir.
So sige. So gusto kag advice as to murag ang risks, sakto ba? Risks
Yes,
involved?
sir. Ang risk
Okay,
involved
sige.
in that matter.
Sige. So the risk basically in this matter is that sila man ang registered, no? Dili mo registered. So basically, ang inyong legal existence sa pagkakaroon kay sole proprietorship ni Ted. So ikaw ba ang founder? Sakto ba?
Kuan mi, sir, we o lima mi ka founder karon, sir.
Oh, lima mi ko founder. Okay, dili mo registered. Okay. Ang problem lang ana, no, kay naghatag mo shares. Is this when you gave them shares? Is it represented in a written instrument? Or nagsabot lang mo?
Kuan na, sir, at first is nagsabot lang, then on the next meeting is nanay document which is ihatag na nila sa amo to sign the investment, pero dito lagi mi nag-hold back lang sa that because wala pa gud mi sec registration.
Okay, sige. So, ngani, no? I advise you, number one, na magpa-register na sa SEC. Okay, that's number one. Next, kay if you feel like dili pa ka mag-register sa SEC, what are the risks? So, ang risk primarily kay unregistered mo kung if in the future bitaw and this person would claim na they own the entirety of the app, ano bitaw, would question the ownership of your business. Mag-away-away mo, ana, especially sa court. Because even among the five of you founders, diba? Maybe some of you would disagree as to the kanang extent of shares. Like, dili gyud siya 1/5. Ano bitaw? Mura bitaw siya 1/5, and then suddenly there's this capital infusion that would get pila ba ka percent, Ted? 30? 20? Pila man ilang gusto ng shares?
Ang maximum nga ilang giingon sa mga, sir, is max na daw ang 15%
15.
company
Okay.
share.
Okay. So, so 1/5, and then kuhaan to siya 15%. And then, basin in the future ba, kanang na kay kauban, we don't know. Moingon nga, dili man tong 15% kuhaon sa ako. Ano ba to? So, that's already difficult, diba? But, do not turn down, my advice is that, well, nanamagi capital infusion, porsigido sila. Don't turn down the investment. Tell them, hey, why not part mo sa incorporators? Okay? We will use that part of that money to incorporate as well. Okay? Na fees involved with one-man corporation. No? Mga registration fees. Nga na. So, my advice for you to minimize your risks, kay involve them in the incorporation. Okay? Kay I cannot in good conscience advise you na kuan lang kanang chill lang mo na mo investor, and then na napoy investor magkagubot mo na sa future, and then that might end your business actually kay mahurot inyong time sa court, no, maglalis mo ana in the future. So for now I think na that person, no, kung proceed gid siya to get 15%, make that person as one of the incorporators of the business. And then, or when you do incorporate, already give them katong shares of stock. So that's my primary na advice. Kung gusto yun ka mag-stay na dili mo registered, no? That's up to you. Okay, that's up to you. You decide that. Pero kanang lisod siya. Okay, that's the thing. Daghan kay siya risk. Mag-awa-away mo sa future, wala mo ihawiran sa court. Inyo paabot nimo sa court ani kay 15% in exchange for our business. Mangutana din ang court, yeah, but 15% when? Okay? Is it 15% in perpetuity? Is it 15% upon that inception of the business? When we value that, katong 15%? Or 15% na as you guys are litigating the case? Na pila man gyud ang iyang dawatonon? Diba? Kung mag-liquidate na mo, mga yana bitaw mga questions. It's quite complicated, no? It's best if you register, involve that person sa pag-incorporate para na siya share daan. Di na siya kailangan na ng upon inception na siya mahawiran nga certificate of shares of stock. So, mao na to, Ted.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, any other?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
In connection with Ted's question, sir, pretty much the same ang among situation na ay gusto mag-invest, pero wala pa na mo siya na sabutan yun, wala pa na mo na meetingan, bali nagkuan lang sila, nag-mention lang sila nga interested sila, pero the thing is dili pa pud may registered, so pwede dito siya, sir, nga kuan amo na lang siya i-include during sa incorporation, bali more siya appeal na po din siya sa founders, inguna na ba may tabo?
Well, dili siya founder kanang in the sense na murag appeal siya sa nag-start sa business, no? Pero appeal siya sa nag-start sa corporation. Ang tawag na incorporator, no, sa business. So may mo siya incorporator, but dili mo siya kailangan i-designate as founder, no? Okay. So I hope it helps you. Kay I really understand this, no? Kay I've also had startups before. That sometimes we take pride na we're founders of a business, and it's a bit of an insult na someone just comes in with kanang butangan lang og kwarta and say, okay, appeal lang ako founder. No, diba? We take pride in being founders of a business, and so kanang di mo siya kailangan inon nga founder, pero part lang siya sa incorporation para usa na bitaw ang process. Pag-register nimo, appeal na siya sa pag-register. Ano ba to? I hope that's clear, no?
Okay, sir. So, if mag-meeting man gani, may pwede na mo siya i-kuan na ang buhato na mo sa iyahang i-invest is for incorporation. Pwede na mo siya ignanana, sir?
Ina nga, kanang, pila ba yung percentage?
Wala. Wala mo na kuan.
Sabot sa mo.
Sabot
sa mo. Pila mo yung gusto, pila mo na mo madawat. Kung na-agree na mo, sige, 15%, and then magdawat may 600,000 or 100,000. Yan na. Then pag human ninyo sabot ana, no, kay matudayon mo sa mag-meeting, na-agree na mo, and then pag meet ninyo, yun na dayon, kung gusto yun ka nga mabutang on paper na you really have this much, no, appeal nila pag-incorporate. So yan na.
Okay. Sige, thank you, sir.
Sige.
Okay. Attorney, we have a question.
Yes.
From our TBI manager, Ms. Shore. Good day, attorney. Can you please expound on what happens if the investor becomes part of the incorporators?
Okay. Kung purchase incorporators, well, ngalan sa founding document, no? Like, sa iba articles of incorporation man, appeal na siya dito as part of the incorporators. And then, when you're talking about an incorporator sa corporation, well, necessarily, na siya shares of stock. And this share niya, kailangan gina siya, well, the inception, kay preferred shares na may par value no voting rights, and then napoy common shares, no? Kining incorporator, usually kuan siya common shares of stock, no, ang iyaha. And then wala kaayo distinguishing factor between incorporator and a normal shareholder. It's just that kung gusto ka kanang ang process kay more streamlined, it's better to have that person as an incorporator sa imong corporation when you're startup, kung mag-startup na ka, no? So kana siya. If you really want more bespoke advice as to the nature of your business, then pwede na ako nimo i-message. But I can only allot time on Sunday evening for your questions. I cannot take it any other time of the week. So there.
Okay, any others? Going once? Twice? Okay. So I think this is the last question. I will claim for the last question, attorney. I think our startups are now very well equipped now, so they are ready na to get investors. However, my only concern, attorney, is baka naman mag-divulge sila into too much investment turnover. So is there a right formula or for achieving the right turnover ratio?
It depends on the nature of your business and also what you want to achieve with your startup, no? Kay na may people na they just want to remain, well, they just want to be founders, and then they want the business to run by itself and maybe start something else. They're prepared to cede control. Nga na. So, kung yan na ang mo set up, no? Kay more likely na you're going to get more investors. Higher ang turnover. But when you're talking about founders who really want to maintain control, they're just not contented with founding the business, but also running on day-to-day operations of the business. Gusto po sila yung CEO, for example. Nga na, to remain a CEO, diba, you need the vote sa board of directors. Okay? And also, one thing that we also need to keep in mind, kay, when it comes to kung ianak na siya, kay you don't turn over as much as an investor. You don't see it as much control. You don't see it as much in terms of shares. So mao na siya. Is there a formula? Wala. However, quite good. I think when you're starting out, it's best to keep investor shares at the minimum. Always. Kay startup pa man, no? Like, you don't really have the resources necessary to sometimes even background check ang investors. Nga na bitaw, kung sa ba investor track record, we don't really have as much money for those things. So, dili pa kayo pod kayo known. For example, ang startup di kayo known sa landscape, you don't know. So, dako kay ang risk na that investor might actually be even bad for your business. So, minimize that, and then the longer you are, the longer naga-operate yung startup, then that's when you start to know more about the investors. That's when you start to be able to expand imong ability to gather information about certain investors. So, mao na siya. Just be really careful lang. And when in doubt, always seek legal advice. So, mao na siya.
Okay, thank you, attorney. So, incubatees, please do take note of that. So, read carefully, chill lang, and then seek legal advice. And that's it. We are out of time. That's it for our first session. Again, thank you so much, Attorney Daba. We had a great time learning with you. Sir, Attorney, can we have a
Yes.
group photo for
Oh, sure.
documentation? Okay,
Uh,
so everyone, kindly turn on your cameras. Okay.
All right, so I think Rachel has been having some technical difficulties. All right, so may I please ask the rest to please turn on their cameras for the virtual group photo for the purposes of documentation.
Para tapos.
Sorry. Sorry. All right. All right, I think this will do. All right, smile. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Attorney Daba, for giving us
welcome.
your
Thank
valued
you.
time for this. Yes.
Thank you, Albert.
Welcome.
We look forward to working with you as well in the future.
Yes.
All
And
right.
then just one thing, no. Katong free legal advice part, kaya it's only Sunday evenings lang. Mao lang. It's free, but
Okay.
only Sunday evenings. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, duly noted. All right, thank you very much, everyone. Okay,
Thank
we'll
you,
take a
Attorney.
break and have a lunchtime until 12:50 before we head on to the second part of the session. All right, goodbye, everyone. See you later. All
Bye.
right,
See
keep
you later.
safe.